Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. I have an awesome podcast interview with Gavin McClurg that I wanted to share with you guys. So I figured a fun way to do it would be to just, instead of staring at a black screen, I would just overlay some of my best flying footage from last year, unedited, just raw. You can kind of see what I'm doing in my pod on these cross-country flights. I'm just going to lay it over the audio of Gavin and I talking, and I think this will be a fun way for you guys to enjoy the podcast on YouTube. I'll put the link to the podcast in the description below, and if you guys like this, please consider donating to support this show. I'm trying to spread as much solid thinking in the paraglide community as I can, and I really appreciate your support. Share this video, share the podcast, subscribe, and turn on notifications, folks. Enjoy. We'll see you on the next episode. Hey everybody, this is Airy in the Air. Welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, my name is Airy. I am a professional action sports athlete, and in the last couple of months, I have been seeing a huge need for nuanced conversation, deeper meaning in people's lives, and a clearer perspective on how to see the world. So I'm doing everything in my power to curate these nuanced conversations with people with perspective and help humanity understand the deep need they have in their lives for meaning, how to create it, how to hold on to it. If this is a mission that you want to support me in, please consider donating. That is paypal.me/airyintheair. I really appreciate the support. Share this podcast. Today, I've got a show that I'm so excited about. It's been so long in the works. Today, I have an interview for you with Mr. Gavin McClurg. Gavin is a paraglide pilot at the highest level. This guy has lived so many lives, from skiing to whitewater kayaking to sailing around the world to paragliding to all of these things. He also is the reason that I have a podcast. His show, the Cloudbase Mayhem Podcast, is all about paragliding, and it introduced me to the idea that I could have a podcast of my own. It was because Gavin was confident to create it, but he was imperfect. He said and he said and his imperfection convinced me that I could have a podcast of my own, and because of that, I am growing in my ability to have positive influence in the world, and so I have so much gratitude for Gavin for this, both for his influence on my own podcast as well as the amazing thing that he has done for the paragliding community by spreading so much knowledge, particularly around safety and our sport, by interviewing hundreds of the sport's top pilots, instructors, and designers. Today, I want to share with you this conversation that Gavin and I had, which is just awesome. We were riffing, folks. We were going deep. So we talk about all kinds of things, everything from coronavirus to whether or not paraglide pilots should be flying right now. Is that responsible socially? We talk about the response of the DHV to shut down flying in Switzerland and Austria and Germany and Belgium and Italy and all these places. We also talk about a great story that he has of throwing his reserve over the dirt in Utah with our friend Cody Matank. This episode is so sick. I hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you, Gavin, for the time and for the inspiration and the community that you've built in our sport. Again, if you guys want to support this show, please consider donating. paypal.me/airyintheair. This is 100% listener supported. Let's keep it ad free. Let's keep it going. Share it. Thanks so much. Without further ado, here's my interview with the man himself, Gavin McClurg. Dude, thanks so much, man. This has been a long time in the making, huh?
Yeah. Are you out in Bend these days?
I'm out in Bend.
Right on.
I'm out in Bend. And you're in Ketchum?
Yeah, and still in Ketchum. Yeah, man. It's good to be home. We were out in California. We were going to be out there for the whole month of March, but things started getting a little nutty out there. We thought it'd probably be nice to be in a place that doesn't have a lot of population density. So came home.
Yeah, you're in a good place to hole up.
Yeah, it's great, man. We had a really nice day of flying today, and everything seems kind of relaxed here, which I'm a little worried about. But it's our caseload quadrupled in one day today, and it sounds like pretty much everybody in the hospital's been exposed. So yeah, man, things are getting real. Things can be kind of wild. Yeah.
Whoa.
But to be here is great because I can just walk out my door and fly or ski tour. It's just like where you live. It's a nice place to go get some vitamin D and get in the sun and just,
we've been getting
be healthy.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Strange times right now, man. And it's a really interesting time to have this conversation with you. It almost feels eerie to want to talk about paragliding right now,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, dude, it's going to be really interesting to see, they've shut it down in Switzerland, France, Italy. It's coming in Spain. And, this thing's so dynamic. Everything's just changing by the hour. I've never hit refresh on New York Times so often in my life, but it's, it was funny flying today. I had a really nice out and back today, and it was just beautiful. It was like perfect spring conditions, and it made me feel a little guilty though. I was like, man, if I got hurt, I just, I don't want to put any more load on our local hospital or our local people at all. And so I get it. I understand why they're, over there, they're like, you can't fly right now. I mean, I totally get it. We've all got to sacrifice, I think. Yeah.
And that is a interesting thing because I've been talking about that and like wondering about that myself. I just got home from a mountain bike ride, and a couple of times today there's just big drops on the run. And I'm just like, wait, like, is today the day? Do I go around today just because of all this? It's like kind of a nebulous thing. Like, yeah, I mean, I just think we've all got to be more heads up. I mean, I've got my main ski touring buddy, he's a real kind of avalanche guru expert guy and teaches a lot of avalanche safety. And he's kind of my go-to ski touring partner. He's super fit. He does tons of ultras and stuff. So we do a lot of training together, and he's an ER doc here, and I haven't even heard from him in like 4 days. I mean, this is a guy that I talk to a couple times a day normally. And, this is in a tiny little town. And, 3 weeks ago when, President Trump was still calling it a hoax and no big deal and just like the flu and all that crap, he was freaked out, not like hysteria freaked out. He was just like, we're in real trouble, and if we don't take this seriously on the front end, we don't have enough ventilators. We're going to be just like Italy is, which is like choosing who's going to die. And, I think that, I think we're going to see that. And I mean, hopefully not, man. I mean, hopefully it'll get warm and, maybe that'll help. But I've been hearing the whole warm thing. And, my boat right now is out in the Maldives on the equator. It doesn't get much warmer than that. And that country is completely locked down. All the tourists were sent home. They've totally quarantined all the islands. Two people brought it there from Italy, and it just went crazy. And It doesn't get hotter than that. Seychelles, same thing. 2 people went there 10 days ago from Italy, and they had it, and now they're in, countrywide quarantine. So, I don't know. I don't think we know. I don't think anybody that says they know really, I don't know. I think we just have to listen to the scientists, and the scientists have me pretty scared. Yeah, I agree. I think that our biggest thing right now is we have to be up leveling our discernment, our ability to like, who has the right information? What does that look like? And how do we learn quickly enough to take collective action?
Yeah. I was reading a really interesting article recently that talked about kind of the difference between tight and loose societies. So tight societies like Singapore, Tokyo, China, South Korea, Austria, these are all places who have a lot more history than we do. And so they've been through some really dynamic disasters in the past. And because of those disasters and because of, war and famine and stuff that's happened there, Black Plagues and, stuff that we just have never dealt with here, they're very tight, so they can lock things down. And, like in Austria, they can impose fines, or in China, you just can't go outside. You're quarantined. That's what you're doing. And, our society is very loose, and that's just not how we approach things. And that's, an infringement on our freedom. But I think if you don't, you can see the numbers. It's crazy how we can see it in real time right now. We can see what's happened in Italy versus other places, and you can even see it within Italy. There are, I don't know if they call them provinces, like our states in Italy, regions, but they've got different mayors and different governors, just like we do. And places that were super loose when it started are like seriously bad right now. Yeah. And other places that, the public went, come on, give me a break. That's way too tight. They're doing okay, so it's going to be real interesting to see how we respond to this. Yeah.
I think, it's become apparent to me in the last couple of days that any action you take in the face of a epidemic that's like effective action seems like way too much. It seems like an overreaction, right? Right. With no sick kids at a school to say school's closed, like all across the country, like with the relatively small numbers and everything, to get everyone emotionally on that boat all at the same time is like a big ask.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I've heard some really smart people talk about, the efficacy of doing it. The problem with closing schools is, something like 40% of our health workers are mothers with kids. Yeah. So suddenly you're putting a ton of weight on them. And, kids, thankfully, this is one of those weird viruses that doesn't seem to be affecting them too much, although now it sounds like it's getting some infants, which is awful. But, but of course they carry it and they bring it home to their parents. And so, man, it's not easy, is it? It's pretty complicated. And then, if you compare it to, if it is flu-like, like the Spanish influenza or something, then, they're very, maybe it does kind of ease off. Maybe these places like Tokyo and Singapore and South Korea that are, being really aggressive about testing, and they've got it, they seem to kind of be steering the numbers the right way. Well, then they open things back up. What happens then? Or maybe it kind of dies down in the summer, at least in the northern hemisphere, but now it's starting to go crazy in the southern hemisphere. So I don't know if that holds any weight. But what happens like the Spanish influenza came out, it was pretty bad. Then it kind of went away, wasn't so bad. Then it came back with a vengeance in the fall, killed a couple 100 million people. So we can't compare this to that because it's we didn't have antibiotics back then. But man, I don't know.
It's incredible. There's also this like silver lining that I've been noticing that is, even though currently our collective action plan is gigantic governments and corporations, it's still incredible. Like even if you were to like sit in a spaceship outside of Earth and be like, oh, look, one got sick. Oh, two got sick. Oh, wow. Look, everyone is drastically changing their lifestyle immediately. And like things are happening. And, like it's an incredible testament to our interconnectedness and our cooperation and our ability to spread a message across the entirety of humanity in a pretty short period of time, right?
Yeah, I like that you bring that up. I mean, a week ago, I was talking to my wife and I was like, what's crazy about this is you can go anywhere right now. We drove across Nevada after leaving California. We went through some tiny, towns that have not been healthy in decades. These are like little tiny ghost towns, almost like mining kind of towns. And you can't find anybody that doesn't know what's going on. Now they're going to have different opinions about what's going on, but
absolutely,
everybody on the planet right now knows what COVID-2019. I know it's crazy.
It is crazy. And it's like, it is. I read this quote the other day that says, for the first time in all of human history, what's on every single person's mind.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's what everybody's thinking about. And that's, the other thing, I've also talked to a few people lately, like I was ski touring a few days ago with a buddy of mine. And, I have to be careful about this because this is going to kill a lot of people. That number is, who knows? And there's going to be a lot of tragedy and a lot of sadness. But I almost feel like in some ways, this disease came out of a wet market in a place, where we're not treating animals the right way. And it's almost kind of like human karma to me. I mean, it's like the earth is going, you know what, we need to back off here a little bit. I got to take care of you folks, but I can't do it if you keep doing what you're doing. And,
that is a powerful thing. And I have been saying in the last couple of days that never in our lives has the veil between the invisible systems that we so closely depend on and our decisions, like the veil is pulled off and we can like finally get a look at things and we feel it in such a more visceral way, right? Like the argument of climate change is so nebulous and far-fetched and so incredibly difficult to experience on a day-to-day experiential level.
Sure.
It's like we need collective, like the claim of we need collective action today to avoid some potentially tragic outcome in 20 years is like a tough thing. I'm not saying that's like hard to convince people of that. There's so many that have, but it's like, it's a hard thing for us to embody in a really deep and profound way that actually changes our behaviors in a profound way that would actually make effective change.
I mean, you're seeing this like massive alteration in CO2 output right now. There's no shipping. There's nothing's moving around. China's cut back on their industrial, like, the skies are clear in China. It hasn't been like that in decades. You look at wouldn't it be cool to be an astronaut right now and see this from space and just go, whoa, like, oh, I mean, it seems to me like in a way it's kind of like Earth maybe just trying to take a breath. And I don't want to sound like crazy or anything, but it's I think that there's a lot of people on this planet, and I also think that in some ways, there's like you said, there's a silver lining to everything, and I'm reading books. I haven't done that in ages. People are spending time with their families. They're cooking. They're slowing down. I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of tragedy but I've had a really incredible time with my family the last couple of weeks. I can be present, and
I totally know what you mean. This thing has been so good for my relationship.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be, and I think it's also, I heard a guy that works with John Hopkins. So he's not the CDC, but he's, a specialist in this kind of stuff and outbreaks, contagions. And, he was incredibly knowledgeable about H1N1 and all of them, all the avian flus and everything that's come out. And he was, he made me feel a lot better, but because, he was still throwing out some pretty big kind of crazy numbers, but what those people are worried about is the kind of shit that's going to kill 60%. It's the Ebola that spreads like coronavirus, and to them, it's not if, it's when. Like, that's totally inevitable. And the only way to get ready for something like that is really, and it seems like, to go through something like this, because we haven't taken this seriously in an awful long time. It's been a long time since the Spanish influenza.
Of course. And it goes to show that this is insidious in paragliding as well, is that our intuitions are conditioned by experience, and our intuitions are insufficient to always warn us of imminent danger.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, for sure.
Like, just because you've never crashed in rotor leads you to fly into rotor to crash in the rotor. Like, things that Jeff Shapiro told me a couple of times, he says, things that have never happened happen all the time.
Yes.
And I was like, whoa. And this is exactly one of those. And I think that also it's important to remember that this is something that is like long-term. This is as I read today, called a long disaster. This is not like building fell down, rescuers go in, get the people, death toll, and it's over. This is like an ongoing, really slow, long thing that the people who are going to be at the front lines, both in the medical system as well as the people who read and share ideas, should approach this from a place of joy and like a marathon and I've been encouraging this, as the veil is thin on our systems, let's reevaluate our systems. Like if our children are home right now and we are going to lose half of a school year, we can, and at the time we must imagine new ways to live our lives, because the veil of like my grocery store to me is like kind of thin right now. And I'm like, well, if the grocery store doesn't have food, I'm kind of fucked. Like the whole system is like, we're all seeing it in a really visceral way. And I think that as action sports athletes, we have a really unique mental experiment of like, okay, I'm going to self-quarantine myself because I don't want to be sick or infect anyone else. But then the question goes down to like what we started this conversation with is like, can I paraglide right now? And if I paraglide, what kind of flights and how low do I fly and how much bar do I push? And it's like, I had a friend from the Dolomites today call me and he says, oh, I flew my paraglider today. It was beautiful. He says people were angry and yelling and taking pictures of me trying to find out who I was. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's a really interesting thing. Cause like, do we stop driving cars? Do we stop, what level of risk is tolerable in these kinds of instances right now?
Yeah. I mean, it's all interrelated, isn't it? I mean, today I had this beautiful flight, and that was definitely on my mind. I was definitely giving myself a lot more margin. I wasn't pushing things, just because I was like, my buddy's an ER doc. He's got enough shit to deal with right now. And then I landed, and my buddy picked me up, and we had some laughs, and we talked about exactly what you and I are talking about right now. And his point was like, hey, everybody's so focused on money and stuff and things. And maybe this is a way to reset a little bit, and people can see where real joy comes from. And, that's pretty cliche, but it's true. And
it's so true.
And then I went, he took me to my car and I went to the grocery store, and this was a grocery store I don't usually go to. I was hoping they had flour because I love baking sourdough, and nobody's got flour right now. And I was like, I'll try this place and see if they've got any. And nobody in there, everybody masks. Was hanging out, no masks, no gloves. The other grocery store, they were all wearing gloves, nothing. And our community is about to get hammered. And, like they just today, right after I got home from that, they announced that we're in lockdown, but they didn't say what that even meant, so we're kind of slowly catching up. But, so I called the store afterwards, and I was like, I was trying to be really nice, but I was like, hey, I worry about your workers, and I really think you guys should be, and I worry about our community. I think you guys should be more proactive about this. And they're like, well, we just, it's their choice. They get to decide. And I was like, man, I don't know. And I thought, God, who's taking more risk here? I don't know.
Yeah, that pokes a big hole at our, when we talk about China, huge population of oppressed and obedient people in general. The government is gigantic and people love to stand in lines and obey the government. But here we have a culture of freedom, especially in Idaho. You have this culture of freedom where it's like, I can do whatever I want. You can't tell me what to do. And then that butts up against this gigantic experiment that we're having right now of like, what is collective action and what is our responsibility? Like if Gavin is going to wash his hands and not lick the counter at the grocery store, that seems reasonable, but can he paraglide?
Right. Yeah.
Exactly, the snowball tumbles down to each and every single one of our individual choices. And I think that's just a testament to the true nature of our interconnectedness as a species.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's crazy times, man. It's crazy times. And
it's unprecedented, isn't it? I mean, at least for guys like us, I'm sure, there's people still around that have lived through the Second World War that, it would be something akin to this. But, to me, it's like, 2008, like, that's a cartoon compared to this. You know, it, like you said, it's, to me, you're just the tiny little speck of snow right now. And it's just about to start rolling down the hill in a really wet, loose kind of day, you know, and it's going to boomerang. And that's, you know, this guy that was, like I said, a lot more knowledgeable than I am about the actual disease and that kind of thing. He was definitely being careful with his words because, and he actually kept saying this, you know, he's been on, you know, CNBC and MSN and Fox News, and he's a real expert. And he's like, you know, I'm way, way, way more worried about panic than I am about COVID 2019. You know, like if people lose their shit, that's when we're really in trouble.
Yeah, that's always the case. That's always the glider collapses, but the moment you really lose your fucking, you know, leave the scene of the crime is when you really put the nail in the coffin, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's you know, it's funny as athletes to have to assess our thing. But, you know, I think that, you know, Will Gadd, he talks about this, the powerful effect of negative thinking, where he's like
positive power, negative thinking.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. He's like, if I fly in there is a chance that I'm going to splat on the deck and die or something, you know? And it's like,
what's trying to kill me? You got to always be trying to figure out what's trying to kill you. Yeah.
I love that. And there's such amazingly powerful lessons that come from all of these sports that we do. But, you know, as we paraglide, we look down at the rocks and we're like, well, my safety net of like civilization and humanity catching me with this first world healthcare is like maybe not exactly there right now. And maybe my leash is not quite as tied to this line that I'm walking that it usually is.
You know what I was thinking about today? I mean, when we fly here, we're pretty quickly, you know, 5K in any direction, you know, unless we're flying to Stanley or something, we're kind of in the boonies and there's still a lot of snow. And so, you know, we abandon roads all the time, but I was thinking about it today. I was like, man, if I land out today, who's going to pick me up?
Yeah.
You know, and it's not really fair for me to even hitch, really, you know? So yeah, you know what, I don't obviously feel very much for us. What I really feel for the people who are already furloughed. You know, there's going to be some economic destruction here that is, again, unprecedented. And that's why I think, like, you know, 2018 was rough, but I just think this is going to be a whole different shit show. And
yeah,
I think, like, the economic, like,
for sure,
it could go on for so long, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I've been reading Jordan Greenhall, and he akins this to what he calls a meta crisis, where, you know, even a small downturn in our economic viability, that we don't work for even a month or 2 months or 6 months, like in the bigger picture, it's like just a blip of time that we have to stop what we're doing. But like, just to see how delicately stacked the entire house of cards is, that you pull out the restaurant worker's paycheck and like how the whole thing starts tumbling downhill towards our village.
Yeah. Oh,
I think that is what is at the crux of people who are in denial or not quite, you know, and I would argue that the same thing is true about climate. It's like the people who have the individual power, just the mass like of population that we need millions and millions of people to change their behavior simultaneously. It's like those people are kind of locked in this financial motivation game where their limbic system is activated even to imagine a world where they don't have to work for money, and like it just doesn't work in the same way that they've been conditioned to believe that it has to. It's like getting those people to change their behavior and their motivations is just such a profound ask.
Yeah. And you know, it's the case with climate change. It's the case with healthcare. It's the case with just about everything. This always impacts the people who can withstand it the least, you know? And so,
of course,
you know, like, especially here where, you know, the places that are doing pretty well with COVID-19 have free healthcare, you know? And because people aren't scared to go get tested, go spend some money, you know, like, but well, here they are, they're sprayed. So, I mean, what is it? 40% of Americans can't come up with $400. And so like if they had an emergency medical payment or emergency, house payment or whatever it is. So, the government right now is talking about sending everybody $1,000 or $1,200. Okay. Well, that's a week worth of food. Then what? It's like, I mean, that's, and like you said, those are the hourly workers that, man, I feel for them. Holy shit.
Yeah. And every industry, you look at that, like shutting down our paraglide manufacturers' factories across the world. It's just like every little industry is connected. We're so interconnected.
Everything.
We're so
my buddy that I was skiing with the other day, he's an IFMGA guide. His work has evaporated. Gone. He had a trip in the Dolomites, and then he had a trip in Mont Blanc in France. Gone. His last trip got canceled in Japan. Gone. Nothing in the summer. Sawtooth Mountain Guide's done. They're over for the season. Our ski area closed on Sunday. It's just how many people work for the ski area, how many people work for the restaurants, how many people work for the hotels. The hotels are a ghost town right now. Marriott just a couple of days ago announced they were going to lay off tens of thousands of people. And this is like, we're in March, man. This thing just started.
For sure. Or, is barely in its inception here. The numbers are so small right now, and the risk is so invisible and so nebulous. It's just super strange times. But, we've gone so deep, and I'm super, super happy to do this. You've been really out.
Sorry, we're not talking about much about sports, are we? Are we supposed to?
No, and that's cool, man. Honestly, like we go out into these places, we have these experiences, and they literally change our perspectives. Like a paraglider, I have just made this analogy over and over that it just has physically changed my perspective and been this catalyst that helps me change every perspective that I have, to see humanity from 8,000 feet off the deck and think, wow, we are little ants. Look at us. It's like, and so I'm excited to hear these things from you. And I think that people are really eager, and you have a lot of people who really listen intently to your podcast. And, that's how I came into contact with you. I was in.
Well, that one's easy, man. I don't say much. I just bring smart people onto the show that fly.
I love the podcast, and I so frequently wish I was like, come on, let's turn it around. Let's ask him some questions. I'm so curious. I have so many questions. And I think we should do another podcast, a paraglide specific. We're going deep to interview Gavin about paragliding, and all the paraglide pilots listening. I'm sorry that we've just been rambling about world news. Okay, we are usually so far from the fucking news, but today it's just, it affects whether or not we think we should fly. And I think that is.
I just wrote I do this column for Cross Country Magazine every other issue. And so my due date was the 13th. And so I was a couple of days late, but I think I submitted it on Sunday. So just, what is it? Today's Thursday. So a few days ago. And it was all about COVID, because I thought this is going to be really cool. I'll write it now, and then it's going to come out in 2 months. And what happens? Is it just over and that was hysteria, or is it way worse? Is it in the middle somewhere? Yeah. And so I put a bunch of statistics in there, 180,000 people have confirmed cases now. And I think that would be really interesting. 2 months to go back and go, whoa.
Yeah. And look at that, how that your opinion, was I right? You're kind of like putting some chips on the board there.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Super Final had just been canceled, and the NBA had just been canceled, and a bunch of stuff had just been canceled. But flying in France and Italy and Switzerland hadn't been canceled. That's happened since then. I never even thought, that never occurred to me. It literally never occurred to me. I thought, okay, well, you could get quarantined, that kind of thing, but shutting down flying, that's pretty radical. That's and it totally makes sense. I mean, when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, okay.
I guess we're all I talked to my friend Isaac Levinson. He's a whitewater kayaker yesterday, and I published the podcast with him. And I wrote that we talked about kayaking and the epidemic chill out. We're all just like, maybe today's not my day to plug that waterfall, or fly too close to this peak, or go super deep, or any of those. And it's like, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, it's the, talking about all this stuff. Anyway, what I love about the podcast is what it's done for my own personal flying. When I hear from people all the time is that, people just come up to me and go, "Oh man, I love the podcast. And, I have you in my head." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" Well, no, when I'm flying, I have you in my head and I have the podcast in my head. And I dig that because, we can't kid ourselves. What we do is wicked dangerous, and we need to be aware of that. And I've just been way more mindful of margin since the podcast started, and I like that.
Yeah,
the one I just did with this guy. Oh, sorry, but the one I just did with this guy Manu Bonti, he was like, who's the better pilot? Like the one that goes around, does a nice thing, it's super aesthetic, has a great time, has no low saves, or the guy that goes a little bit further, has 5 low saves and is bragging about the low saves. And I was like, yeah, man, that is totally true. I mean, we need to reassess what makes a good pilot. And I think that's
so perfectly analogous to what we're talking about right now.
It is, right?
As we up-level our discernment as pilots, where we say, what is important here? What are the systems that are holding me up right now and making it like possible for me to fly at all? And also, what is important? Like, what is the important part of this flight? Is it a safe launch, a safe landing, and a beautiful flight? Or is it numbers and miles and,
exactly.
But it's true, man. Like, you are in the head of a lot of pilots, and honestly, you pop into my head too as I fly, and so does Carrie Castle. The Carrie Castle episode, the thing that she just, like, says so obviously, she's just like, I don't know why it's so hard for people. You just stay away from the hill. And I'm like, oh God, I literally, I learned to soar, and then I just took soaring and I applied it to everything else. And I was just like, why am I so close to the hill right here? Like, it obviously doesn't work here. That's why I'm right here.
Yeah. It's like Will Gadd said, that it doesn't matter the level you are, you still will make mistakes. You're always going to make mistakes, and mistakes when you're in aviation can really, really hurt.
Yeah. Or when you're in government, or when you're in public policy, or when you're in, economics, or like, we've kind of deferred our aircraft. Like, the pilots who are flying the happy aircraft of humanity are not exactly, we worry about their motivations. We worry about their egos, their mistakes as well. And, as we're seeing now that it's like the analogy of what is a good pilot. The question is also, what is a good government? What is a good financial system? What is a good economic model? What is a good way? How do we interact with our fucking neighbors, man?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. It's, an interesting thing for me to see as the country, in the last few years has just split and split and split. And, it's gotten more and more and more tense. On the one side, you really have people who really hate the government and don't want to pay it any money, don't want to, they don't respect it. It's just bureaucracy. It's just bullshit. It's just, it's wasteful. And it is some of those things, but man, don't you want a government right now? I mean, I think it just puts right in the spotlight how important it is to have these systems,
Yeah. Well,
I would not want to be dealing with this in Nepal. Or Syria or Somalia, man, that would be rough.
Yep. It is a question of, okay, if we, and, the further intellectual, like exercise we could do is what, because the people that are so afraid of the government, like you're talking about, and who hate the government, they have been so right for so long. Right? The injustices of government is a never-ending rabbit hole that is totally true. The Nazis, the Soviets, the Khmer Rouge of Cambodia, like the times that people have like been lined up and killed by their governments is like the stories never end. Like the history just goes on and on and on. So these people have been so right for so long. And so now we are seeing those two ideologies clash. Right now, the people who are like, we can do better with our government, and the people who are like, the government is totally not the answer and it's tyrannical. It has the power to kill us all. And both of those people are now seeing, okay, at the root of the need is some ability to take collective action when it matters most. And it's like, whether it's like, I don't think that governments are actually the way. I don't think that governments, crony capitalism, force, I don't think that is actually the way. I think that the way that I've been understanding it lately is that government is like a complicated system. A complicated system has a rigid set of rules and it is externally designed. And a complex system is something that is self-organizing and emergent. That is ecology. That is the weather. That is our bodies, our minds. And for 15,000 years, we as humans have been taking these complicated systems and we've been trying to apply them onto complex systems. And our minds are so powerful. We have done such an amazing job that we have 747s and we have paragliders. But as we move forward in humanity, we have been exponentially extracting resources that are linear. We have been playing these win-lose, competitive, zero-sum dynamics on a finite playing field. And the math just doesn't add up for that at all. It's the same with the climate. It's the same with the government becoming tyrannical. It's the same with the coronavirus.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, well said. You sound like Sam Harris there, man. That was very articulate.
Harnessing some Sam Harris. But yeah, I'm so stoked to have you on the podcast, man. It's really fun to talk to you. You know, we met at Pine Mountain and we conversed before and after that. And to be totally honest, in 2015, I was in Morocco. I was road tripping with my best friend and my parents.
Yeah, I read your article about that.
Almost dirty in front of the herders. Yeah. But I can just so specifically remember being on this road trip and listening to a podcast episode with Cody Matank, who I've gotten to spend some time and fly with Cody, and he's just so awesome. I love that guy. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you tell the story there of throwing your reserve and it not being connected to your harness.
I do. You know what? That's fresh in my mind because I'm working on this book of the first 100 shows with Cross Country Magazine. So it's like a book version of the podcast where we go back to the people and ask a bunch of more questions. Hey, can you elaborate on this? And so it's going to be it's super fun and kind of grabbing all the nuggets. And anyway, so I've been listening to all of them, in some cases 2 or 3 times over again. But I just listened to Cody's actually a couple weeks ago. And yeah, it was kind of funny. We were a little cagey about it because it had actually happened like that, 2 days before that podcast when we recorded that. And so I later went on and, explained exactly what happened. But yeah, I threw my reserve. I was a little below 1,000, which was kind of our rule when we were over the dirt, like nothing radical under 1,000. And so I was a little below that, and I blew a heli and got all twisted up, and I was like, sweet, this is what I've been preparing for. and yeah, hucked it, and I was like, wow, I'd never thrown my reserve in like a combat situation, and so I was like, wow, these things really take a long time. and I looked back behind me, and my reserve was just like perfect. It was just perfect, but like way too far away from me. I was like, holy! And I shit you not, I was like, I literally in my mind. I mean, it should have been like, whoa, dude, you're in deep shit. But in my mind, I was like, wow, that's actually pretty funny.
That's what happens when you don't leave the scene of the crime, right? You didn't panic. You're trained to not panic so that you can actually see the humor.
And it was great. I'm not sure if we talked about it in that one. So, I did the whole and I'd like to think that didn't take too long, but I did the whole, wow, that's funny. And then I checked my height again and I was like, ooh, I'm in trouble here. And about right at that time, I'm an XC pilot. I'm not an acro guy. And there were a number of things, as there always is, that led up to that. And I can't remember if I talked about it in the podcast or not, but, so the night before that day, I'd gotten home super late. I'm up in Ketchum. I'm going, it's a 9-hour drive to go meet Cody, which I basically did all night. And I had this bad tweak in my back, so as I'm transferring over, from my XC kit to my acro kit, it's kind of dark. I'm trying not to wake up the family. I'm tired. My back hurts, so, obviously, yeah, I missed a very major step there, and there's no excuses. That's just ridiculous, but that's what happened. And so, but the other thing was that, so then it was the first flight of the day. So, I get towed up and I'm all excited and I'm pumped, and I do some dynamic stalls, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try a few helis here and then I'll go land. I think it was the first flight. And so I'm not warmed up. I'm not, I've driven all night. I'm kind of out of it anyway. But I didn't even, when I threw it and realized it wasn't attached, it didn't occur to me that I was in my acro harness. I had another reserve, so I threw the right one. That one's gone. If I had gone immediately to my left, I might have been okay. But when I looked back, and it was, because I threw pretty low anyway, and it was gone. And then I looked down, I was like, ooh, I'm at 100 feet. Like, I don't have much time here. And at about the same time, Cody got on the radio and he was like, keep it in deep stall, keep it in deep stall, keep it in deep stall. Like, in other words, keep the wing over your head. Because I was, sure. I had two massive cravats, but it was pretty stable, so I was actually just like coming down under a really small reserve.
Yep.
And so the last thing he wanted me to do, like, I had trained, both toggles in one hand, get them down deep. If you're in a tail slide, great. That's fine. That's way better than way better than even deep stall. Yeah. But what you don't want to do exactly, you don't want to go in an auto rotation. You don't want to get one side flying again. You don't want to let this thing go. And and I, obviously I didn't get out a radio and go, yeah, like, no shit, dude. But I was happy to hear that. And I was like, because it reminded me of it. And then I was like, oh, I got to throw. And so I switched toggles into my right hand and went for the left. And it was one of those where I saw it like roll out and then it hit the ground. It didn't, there was just no time. And so the last thought I had was, okay, keep the wing stalled and do the best tuck and roll you've ever done, man. Do not stick this landing. Like, don't, because I have seen a couple of really bad accidents where, I think if people had done a proper PLF, they'd still be really hurt, but they'd be hurt a lot less. Yeah. And so that's all I was thinking about is like, dude, just hit the deck and try to get as much as you can on your harness. Cause I was in a big, cushiony acro harness. And, for sure. And and so I hit and it's, it's this big, soft 4-inch dirt. That was the other thing. And, no rocks. I was so lucky. And I did one of those kind of like, check the knees, check the hips, check the, Seriously. And like, holy shit, I'm okay. And I called Cody. So at this point, because the horizon, he's rewinding the drogue. And so he had seen me at 100, but he doesn't see me hit, and so he's thinking like, okay, I'm coming up on my buddy. He's going to be toast or really hurt. And so I call him on the radio and I'm like, Cody, man, dude, I'm okay. And he's like, no, you're not. No, you're not okay. That's the adrenaline. Fucking lie down. You're not okay. And I was like, no, man, like seriously, dude, I've dealt with a lot of adrenaline in my life. I'm actually okay. Like I can walk. I'm all right. And he's like, no, you're not.
I love him. I love him for that. What a sweetheart.
Yeah,
he's coming for you, dude. He's gonna save you, dude.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. God, he's become a good pilot. Whoa,
man, no kidding, huh?
Wicked comp pilot. Yeah,
yep. He really is.
Really figured it out. Super competitive, and
he's another one of those
consistent.
Guys. And he's really humble, and he's really willing to share his knowledge. Like I flew in a comp.
He's really good at sharing his knowledge.
He really is. He's very articulate.
Good. Yeah,
he's very articulate.
But he's also really thought about it, and he's a fantastic coach. He's doing some, I got to give him a little plug here. He's going to be doing some SIV training. And I think this summer he just bought a jet boat and he's already got a winch and stuff. And I highly recommend people going to Cody because he really thinks about it. He's one of the few people in the States that's doing the Twisted Infinite and stuff. I mean, he's solid. And, but he's also just really, he can teach the skills no matter how you learn, if you're kinetic, if you're verbal, if he's really good at it.
And he can do a Twisted Infinite.
Yep. Yeah, man.
Oh, dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's doing a lot of twisted stuff. He's really better one way than the other. But yeah, I mean, he's doing the Asphere. He's doing the whole works. I mean, he's not he's not Theo LeBlanc. Like he's not going to be able to go and do,
we can't all start paragliding when we're 4.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Well, and the other thing too, I think that we've both kind of learned, and I'm just not even close to his level and even remotely, but he's also had quite a bit of, it's traumatizing on your body, and he's got a neck issue and he's got some other stuff. So when he really starts pulling a lot of dynamic stuff and spending much time doing the infinite, it lays him out, so he just, those guys that are going to the Canaries and stuff and training all winter, he just can't, it just breaks him.
Yeah. It's like slopestyle, man.
Yeah,
exactly. Go ski powder pretty sustainably for a long time, but if you want to jump off of everything you can see, it's like
that was over for me 20 years ago, man. Well, you're still doing that, but I can't do that shit anymore.
I don't know, man. Like honestly, I too have screwed up a helicopter, twisted and thrown my reserve over the desert here in Oregon. This last summer was the first responder on a gruesome fatality at my local flying site, which
I heard about that.
I shook off. I thought I shook off. And then I went to this bike race in Mexico, and just the EMT talking about best practice for coming up on someone unconscious on the trail. Like I could like vomit and cry at the same time. And I'm like, maybe I haven't gotten over this, but not even 5 weeks after I had responded to that incident, my best friend crashed into the top of Abert Rim, this mountain in Eastern Oregon at sunset, in just super, super, super rural, super deep on top of a, 2,200 foot boulder and scree field. And it became a 4.5 hour, luckily our girlfriends were at the bottom and they hiked up and carried our gliders down as I carried Chris down on his back or on my back for 4.5 hours until like 11 at night.
God, dude. Ooh.
And so and also I'm maturing just intellectually and just in my life in general, kind of wondering what are my gifts to the world and what do I want my life to look like. And so I've really super had to reassess my paragliding thing, because I feel like I've pushed pretty hard for 5 years. I think I have 1,000 flight hours or more in 12 countries. And like I've pushed super hard, and I'm just like kind of reassessing everything from my mountain bike to my skis to my paraglider. And I don't want to give up pushing, right? Like pushing is such a privilege. It's such a privilege to have a beautiful healthcare system and all of my friends and family and all of the support of humanity as I try to venture out into the void, like it's so beautiful, but it's also like been kind of heavy and weighing on me in the last quarter of the year for sure.
I mean, I think it's great that you're honest about it and you're thinking about it, because, in some ways it's the luck of a draw for a lot of us that go through that stage. And I've thought and talked about this a lot. How do you get good without pushing it? And I am convinced now that you don't have to. I think that we push it almost always for the wrong reason.
Totally.
We push it for the fucking numbers. We push it for X contests. We push it for, and I am like you. I definitely want to keep pushing it, but I want to do it with a margin, and I want to do it in a way that I want to be mindful of when I do it, that this is worth it, because if I fuck that up, there should be no sympathy for me. Yeah. And, so like, for example, the X-alps is one of the greatest things I've ever done. I've done 3 of them now. It is awesome. So when I go to that race, I better be trained, I better be tuned, and I better be in the right mindset, because I'm going to have to push. But the rest of the time, Kriegel's not taking that much risk, because he trains so hard. He's won 5 of those now, and he's taken the least risk of any of us. He's more casual about it because he's that much better. And so, but back to pushing it, I don't think we have to. I had this guy, Alex Roby, on the show a while back, and, year after year he's won X contest 3 times, he's year after year after year, he's always top 3 on X contest. Now he's not chasing, like, quote unquote, chasing the numbers. He only flies the really good days. Like, that's it. That's his secret. He flies 10 to 12 days a year. And every time he flies, he's staying in the air for 10 or 11 hours. So, he claims he doesn't even know how to do a great wing over because he doesn't fly when there's wind. He doesn't fly when it's gnarly. He doesn't fly when there's OD. He doesn't have to push it, and to me, in a lot of ways, he's winning. Pushing it feels good and it's fun. And, when you pull it off, it's great. But more and more, I don't want to pull it off. I want to be proud of what I've just done. My mentor is a guy named Matt Beecher, and Nate Scales is there too. But Matt Beecher is a Jedi. He shows up in VIA every year. He'll maybe fly 50 hours a year. He's always going to crush there. He'll just show up and crush everybody. But he's put in the time, but he's also he's so wise about how he does it. He's so good at backing down. He's so good at, like, I don't need this. I don't need this today. I want to be home for dinner.
I love that. And I think what you're saying is really, like, all of our decision making hinges on this motivational toolkit. Like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Yeah.
And that is such a like powerful notion and such a powerful inquiry to be in right now. Like, why are we doing the things that we're doing?
Yeah. And I think back to your point about external motivation, I think there's a ton of people in this sport, and I have been there in this sport, when we're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're doing it for the peer. We've been a pilot for a long time. How can we leave this community that we love so much? There's so many other forces, and then there's just the fact that you're having a bad day. Well, you're going to aviate under a paraglider, and what comes up over and over and over in the show, especially when I go back and re-listen to them, and I'm working on this book, like, man, if you're not having fun, don't do it.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that's the key. And it's not that much fun to be scared, man. I don't know about you, but it's like, I love being on the edge. I've chased it my whole life. I love the awareness. I love flow. I'm not an adrenaline junkie. I think we're beyond that, but, like the focus you have when you're highlining, that comes from training and preparation. That doesn't come from fear, it comes a little bit from fear, and fear is what keeps us alive. That's a fantastic thing. Like, absolutely, you want, pushing it is, I think we can push smart. Let me say it that way. I think we can push smart. I like you, I don't want to give it up, but I think we need to check in with ourselves. Jeff Shapiro and Will said this, they both said this very eloquently. It's a really good thing to ask ourselves, is the risk worth it? Like, not once a year, every time you fly. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And because some days I think it is, some days you do have it. And
even amidst, the things that we're talking about, even amidst potentially being a burden on society, I think that you're still, like if someone in Germany or in Italy were to paraglide today, I would be like, well, even though we kind of collectively have decided that we shouldn't be doing that, there are motivational reasons where you could make a good case for being free and riding your bike or running or climbing a tree or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think more than anything right now, it's, we have to be taking care of ourselves and keep taking care of our health. And to do that, you need vitamin D. You need to go outside. The sun kills a virus. You need
flow. You need progression.
You need these things for your immune system. So, I think as a society, we need these things. So who knows where that guy was, maybe he was that morning in a really dark, bad place, and he decided that it's worth it. So, yeah.
I know. He was too. I've gotten report from his friends that was exactly the case, but right. I digress. I think that this has been a great first episode of the Gavin and Ari podcast. We are a fucking thing. We are a thing. No, but I super appreciate it, man.
Dude, I've had like an hour to just look at your gorgeous girlfriend on my screen here. This is just terrific. We can do this whenever you want, man. I won't tell my wife I just said that. You got to cut that part when we get the show up live. And you're the most beautiful person in the world, but she's second.
Well, thank you. That's flattering. I'll send her your regards, and I really appreciate it. I think we should do this again. Once the world is not upside down, we'll get back to paragliding. Love to fly with you up and catch them. Can't wait to have to wear oxygen. That's something that I really look forward to in my paragliding career. I've never used oxygen intentionally, and I've needed it.
This is the place, man. Bring a couple bottles, and I always have the big one out in my garage so I can refill you. And there's a little cabin in the back. You're welcome anytime. And it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to another one.
Great, man. Thanks so much, Gavin.
Thank you, Ari.
Yeah, see you, man.
Cool, bud.
You're awesome, dude. This is fun.
Dude, I would have liked to follow up your when you were so articulately talking about government and the Khmer Rouge and everything else, but I had to leave that one. You were way fucking over my head, man. I'm just an athlete. That was sweet.
Honestly, dude, I have been actually for the last couple of days, I've been live streaming on Facebook. I've been pumping out podcasts. I've been trying. I see the opportunity right now, Gavin. I see it. We have if we want to change people's minds on the climate, now is the time. If we want to change people's minds on industrial fishing and thus unsustainable practices that we have, both in our own decision-making, whether we're paragliding or from bigger things like how we're eating, how we're moving, what we're extracting from the earth and what we're putting back, is now is the time that people the veil is pulled away from them and they can actually see the system.
I applaud that, man. And I mean, you're totally right. And also it's just, man, it's a great time to be a podcaster, bro. I mean, it's, people are going to be spending a lot of time at home. I mean, my podcast rate's gone up, not my deliveries, but listening to podcasts has gone through the roof lately because, we've all got a lot of time. And,
we do.
Man,
that's why everyone's saying yes. They're
I want... Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Tomorrow I have a scheduled podcast at 10:30 a.m. with my friend Charles Post, who's an ecologist, and I want to talk to him about how good it is for the environment for us to be sitting at home.
Yeah, great. Oh, I can't wait to listen to that. Obviously, it's really good. I mean, it's like you said.
I really thought
I'm actually really enjoying this time. It's been really weird. I mean, I'm definitely paying a lot of attention, and and I always kind of do, but I'm reading a ton, and it's fascinating. And I wanted to be careful of that in the show about talking about because it's pretty easy to view it for. I mean, this isn't going to wreck our family, but it's which is fantastic, but it's so I want to be sensitive about that, but at the same time, I mean, I really do feel like this is the earth just going like, fuck, man, I need a break. And
I think that is, we can make meaning out of anything, but I think that is a metaphor that is not unhealthy to make, right? That's we can definitely think of it in that way with a healthy understanding that the earth is not malicious or malevolent against us, but that now is the time that look at how the earth literally creates. I love the analogy that you made that we were treating bats and ducks and pigs and everything wrong in the fucking wet market in Hubei. And the earth is like, hey, I tried to tell you, but here, breathe it.
Hey man, that's not cool. You shouldn't be doing that. We're all part of the same system. You shouldn't be doing that shit. So I think, well, dude, honestly, man, the lessons are many. I think we could
go all day about the lessons.
Well, yeah, we could. I mean, I do hope that I applaud what you're doing because I do hope that, collectively this is a bit of a wake up call.
It is. And I think that we all have this responsibility and an opportunity. This person that I've had, I think has really good sense making right now. I'm encouraging everyone to look him up. His name's Daniel Schmachtenberger. He has been saying, look, if you're feeling overwhelmed right now, that's totally fine. Take time off, relax, breathe, meditate, do yoga, find your center and come back. But don't post things. Don't speak things from an uncentered place. We really need to like clean up our information ecology right now. And we need the people who are feeling centered and motivated and positive to come forward and make themselves the leaders that they are meant to.
Yeah. So he's the Neurohacker Collective.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
I'll check him out.
So if you've ever read the book Stealing Fire about flow state.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler and those guys and Daniel Schmachtenberger and Jordan Greenhall. Those are all guys. They all live in Encinitas. My girlfriend is really close friends with Daniel Schmachtenberger. That's how I got introduced to this whole group of thinkers. And they are doing an incredible job right now with sense making. And most of the things that you're like, wow, you seem so articulate. I'm like, have been digesting what they're saying and I've been innovating and talking about it. And like, these are the really high level sense makers that I've found that I can really like. It resonates with me and I feel like there's positivity and things are moving forward in the right direction. I encourage you to look those guys up. And I also encourage you to have a positive effect through your podcast and through your influence. You have created a really amazing community and you've done so much for the paragliding community. Myself, like I have listened to so many of those. It's helped me immensely and people are listening to what you have to say. And even if that is, make sure you take care of yourself and enjoy your time with your families. The positive messages right now that are even anecdotal are important.
Yeah, totally, man. I appreciate that. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I will. That's I've been thinking about the opener for the last week for the next one. Like, ooh, what am I going to say? But yeah, man, well, cool. Well, I'll check this out. This is cool. I'm on this Neurohacker Collective right now. I'll check it out. That sounds pretty interesting. Neat.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Gavin. Let's do this again.
Thanks, bud. Talk soon.
See you. All right, guys, I hope you like that. Maybe you noticed there at the end, we pretty much sign off, but there's just so much good riffing that we continued on for like another 5 minutes. So I figured that was the little VIP backstage pass that you got. Gavin is such a pro at recording podcasts, and he has really, it's been so rad to watch how over the last 5 years, his own ability to be a presenter and a deliverer has grown exponentially. And like I said, he was the inspiration for me to start podcasting, which has been the venue in which I have clarified my thoughts. I have improved my communication and have started to build an audience and community around positive, forward, clear thinking. And so I have a lot of gratitude and respect for Mr. Gavin. And thanks to you so much for being here. If you want to support this show, please consider donating. That's paypal.me/airintheair. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it listener supported, ad free. Please spread this message around. And stay tuned for more awesome episodes. I got so much stuff coming your way, folks. Thanks. See you on the next episode.